the only thing that gon' be normal is distribution. Normal folks gon' infuse some. Optimize your lineups and you feed the rest, you mute them. Turning it up, these numbers are loud. Peeping this game from a nimbus is wild. Making it rain while I embrace all this risk, I'm insane. Talking about that best bell, I'm the best till into the next world. Guess I got next still. Best bell, I'm the best till into the next world. Guess I got next still.
And welcome into the Week 9 edition of Stardom Situm, where I'll answer your fantasy football questions. My name is Bradley Stalder. You can follow me on Twitter at FFStalder. Make sure you're hitting that red subscribe button. Appreciate y'all jumping in to the live stream where I answer your fantasy football questions. Stardom, Situms. We're in Week 9. You could be 4-4. You could be 2-6. It's still possible for you to make the playoffs. Let me tell you, I started one season where I started 0-7, and then I just pivoted hard and still made the playoffs, won the championship that year. It is possible. Do not give up on this year. That's why I'm here for you to answer your questions, talk it through, figure it out for you. And this is always one of my favorite shows to do on Friday nights. Some of you know, I am in the Fantasy Pros Accuracy Rankings contest. I do that every week, and right now I'm ranked 36th out of over 200 rankers in the Accuracy Rankings contest, and Week 9 was off to a strong start. I had Dallas Goedert as a top 3 tight end this week. I had Chris Moore and Philip Dorsett as 10 spots above the consensus rankings. Let's see. I knocked down A.J. Brown from wide receiver 7 to wide receiver 12 this week, and only 3 rankers out of over 200 were lower than me on A.J. Brown. Talk about nailing that. Only 13.9 fantasy points. That would have been good for wide receiver 21 last week, so week 8. So I want to tell you that I'm here for you. Sometimes things fall on the wrong side of variance. It happens from time to time. A third of this game, is luck, and a third of it is making the right decisions, and a third of it, of course, is draft season. That's over. So we're going to focus on the third that you can control and try to make the best decisions that you can based on the known range of outcomes. And that's what this BestBell Fantasy Football is all about, talking about the range of outcomes. What is the most likely scenario for particular players, for their outcomes, their upside? That's something that we keep in mind in the BestBell Fantasy Football live stream. For those who haven't joined, once again, hit that red subscribe button and drop your comments and questions in the chat. I love having y'all join. Ricardo's jumping in from YouTube. Hey, Ricardo, thanks for joining the live stream. Appreciate you. Yeah, what's up? I was crushing Thursday night. I don't know about you, but it was a lot of fun seeing Miles Sanders score a touchdown. Dameon Pierce got over 130 yards rushing. These were both players that I had as top 12 running backs for the week. And, I wish Miles Sanders had not been vultured by Kenneth Gainwell, but that's the reality. And then the other is, Dameon Pierce, 139 rushing yards. I wish that he would have gotten the touchdown. That would have gotten him up there as well. I mean, we'll be flirting with running back 15 or so, with 12 to 15 with both of those. So I wasn't too far off. That's not too bad. But, I had some big hits on Thursday night. It makes me feel good about, going into the rest of the week and making those rankings. If you haven't checked it out, I have my Fantasy Pros Accuracy rankings contest submissions up to date. My rankings are on Fantasy Pros. The article, I just posted it there. Is available on Fantasy Data. And if you want to use some of the data on Fantasy Data, like I recommend using it, the fantasy footballers use it, Matthew Berry uses it, JJ Zachariason uses it, I use it. Okay, this is the main source where some of your most prolific fantasy football analysts get their data. And I've been writing for the last 2 years for them. And I want to make sure that you have the data you need to be successful. So make sure you're using the promo code FFF20. If you don't have a subscription and you'd like a subscription to Fantasy Data, any size, use that promo code FFF20. All right. Yeah. Evan Gittleman, thanks for jumping in from YouTube. Appreciate you jumping in. He needs some flex help tonight. And we're going to talk through half PPR Juju or DJ Moore. And I'll pull up my rankings here. You can also do that if you get into my article. But for my Fantasy Pros rankings, it's important to understand that these are half PPR. So it's good that Evan fits with that. Sometimes you have to adjust a little based on full PPR or just standard leagues. Okay, so I'm pulling it up. Juju right now, he's my wide receiver 22, and DJ Moore is my wide receiver 16. So I would give the edge to DJ Moore right now. So I'll talk about those players here in a second. Let's hit on DJ Moore. Like, the Cincinnati Bengals gave up a pretty stud game to Amari Cooper just this past week. It looked like Cincinnati was, struggling Monday night. So I want to be bullish on DJ Moore, who's had a few good games so far. Granted, they've been against Tampa, who struggled, and Atlanta, who makes everyone look like the wide receiver one on their team. So, yeah, at least where is it here? At least 16 fantasy points each of the last 2 weeks, double-digit targets each of the last 2 weeks, 69 nice or more receiving yards each of the last 2 weeks. You have to understand, though, that week 8 was inflated by that Hail Mary pass that DJ Moore caught. I would give the edge to DJ Moore. Now, Kansas City's Juju Smith-Schuster is facing a Tennessee defense that does give up the 90th percentile to wide receiver fantasy points, like as a whole core, 32.6 points per game. And there's not a significant edge or a significant decrease for Juju in this game. And looking at what he's done the last couple games, he's been the wide receiver 4 and the wide receiver 7. And over 100 receiving yards each of those last 2 games, plus the touchdown, 20 or more fantasy points. So you've seen some good weeks from Juju, but I think there's more of the upside with DJ Moore against Cincinnati in Cincinnati. And I think as PJ Walker continues to get more comfortable in getting the first team reps, I mean, it's not Baker Mayfield. He's not coming back from being the third string defensive tackle. I don't know if y'all saw that video, but Baker Mayfield was playing snaps in practice as a defensive lineman. That's not encouraging for the former first overall pick. So I'll lean DJ Moore. It is close, though. I have to give it to DJ Moore here. All right, Ricardo's jumping in, asked the question, what's the expectation for Donta Foreman now that Chuba's ruled out again? Well, I already had Donta Foreman as a top 15 play. I haven't updated from that point. I have ruled Chuba Hubbard out, so he was at minimum a top 15 play. Now he moves into he's ahead of DeAndre Swift, so he's going to be at least 14. I don't know if I'm comfortable moving him ahead of Ramondre Stevenson. I think Stevenson just gets the passing down work. So I would keep the highest I would go in Donta Foreman is probably running back 12. You can't ignore the fact, though, that Donta Foreman has gotten 15 and 26 carries, 41 carries over the last 2 games, 118 rush yards each of those last 2 games. And he's just a 0 in the passing game. So if you're expecting he's going to get some passing work, no, he's not. He's just not going to. He luckily fell in the end zone 3 times. You can't be chasing 3 touchdowns, but could he fall in the end zone once and get like 80 yards on 20 carries? Yeah, so 80 yards plus 14. You're talking about 14 fantasy points. So that would probably get him to, running back. His floor is probably running back 18. That's probably a mid running back 2 is the lowest that he would fall given the volume, assuming that all things are equal. And you're thinking to yourself, well, Cincinnati, they're generally a pretty tough run defense, but look what Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt did against the Cincinnati Bengals. So I would say, you're probably firing up Donta Foreman as a high-end running back 2, low-end running back 1 entering week 9. Okay. Randy Miller from YouTube, Conklin, Likely, or Waller? Okay, well, let's pull up the tight end rankings. We're doing a little bit of a pivot here. Conklin's got a tough matchup. Let's just be straight up here. He's not going to repeat the the top, what was it, tight end. Why are things not loading for me as fast now? He's not going to be the tight end one again. Sorry. He's not going to go for 2 touchdowns, 79 yards, 10 targets, 6 receptions. It's just not going to happen for Tyler Conklin because, 12 of those 23 points are from touchdowns. Take away that, and you're looking at, 11 fantasy points, which still does get him into that top 10. But my concern with Tyler Conklin is that he gets the Buffalo Bills this week. And the Buffalo Bills, they're a bottom 26th percentile matchup. They've not given up any touchdowns to the tight end position this year. They give up 7.5 fantasy points per game. So if you need something from Conklin, I guess that's fine. He's going to get like 5 or 6 targets in this game, maybe 7 if they are really committed to ruining Elijah Moore's career. And then he also has per PFF a negative 33% matchup disadvantage. So a 33% disadvantage or a negative 33% advantage, however you want to think about it. So Conklin, it's a bad matchup. It's a bad team defense. And of course, you have to fade based on like variance. Conklin has only 3 touchdowns in the season, 2 of them coming this past week. So Conklin or likely. Now the New Orleans defense is even more difficult. Like you thought the Buffalo Bills defense is tough. The New Orleans Saints are the toughest defense against tight end. They have also not given up a touchdown at all this season. They give up 4.9 fantasy points per game in half PPR, and it's a negative 18% matchup advantage per PFF. Or you can think of it as an 18% disadvantage. Like it's significantly worse for likely. And that goes for Mark Andrews too. I don't think they're going to run likely out 80% of the snaps. I just don't think that that's going to be within the range of outcomes. The reason why likely got all of that run is because Andrews literally didn't play for half of the game plus. So I would have Conklin over likely, assuming that Andrews plays, of course. And then Waller, I don't know if he plays. He's questionable right now. The coaches are saying, oh, he's working really hard to try to get out there. He hasn't played since week 5. He's got the hamstring injury. I haven't heard positive news about Waller. So, okay, I view it as a scenario. Like if Andrews plays, you're probably rolling out with Conklin. If Andrews doesn't play, I'm okay with you playing likely. You just have to understand that both Conklin and likely have really tough tight end matchups this week. So you can't be expecting them to repeat as like the top 3 tight ends in week 9. I would be very surprised if that is the case. Good question, Randy. That was a tough one. And that's why I feel like I had to suss it out a little bit for you. All right. Slammy from Twitch. Who should I start over Keenan Allen? Well, Keenan Allen's not playing, as you quickly found out. Thielen or Jacoby Myers? Let's get the wide receiver rankings out. And I feel like I'm going to lean Thielen, but I've actually jumped Myers over Thielen. Now, Myers does face an Indianapolis defense that is bottom 3rd percentile versus the wide receivers. The Indianapolis Colts only allow 20 total fantasy points per game to the wide receiver position. And New England, they did rule out Devontae Parker for this game due to the knee injury. So it's going to be Tyquan Thornton. It's going to be Nelson Aguilar. It's going to be Jacoby Myers as well. So I think it's going to be, Jacoby Myers has done well as of late. In half PPR, he's finished as the wide receiver 11, 7, and 21 so far this year. He also has a finish of 30, 38, and 47. So he hasn't completely kaputted on you. He has 3 touchdowns in the last 4 games. He's coming off a 9 for 60 game on 13 targets. You'll love to see the target share. That's the second time this season that Jacoby Myers has not just double digit, but 13 targets. So you love to see the targets. And then Adam Thielen. So I do have Jacoby Myers one spot ahead of Adam Thielen in my rankings, despite the tough matchup. It's just that Adam Thielen has not produced in the way that you want this year. He has gotten double-digit targets 4 of his 7 games, but the problem is now TJ Hawkinson is here, and he's commanding an 18% target share. I am lower on Hawkinson than the consensus, but not much. And if we're thinking about like red zone competition, Thielen like makes his living in the red zone, but only has 2 touchdowns to show for it so far this year. TJ Hawkinson in the top 6 among tight ends and red zone targets. So I would lean Jacoby Myers regardless of the format, Slammy. Okay, Ricardo says, yesterday was not that good. My matchup is Jalen Hurts, Damian Pierce, and Goddard, so I'll probably lose this week unless something crazy happens. All those players played well. Yeah, all those players played well this past week. And Randy asks, who does he have? He has Eckler, Mike Evans, St. Brown, Ingram, Mahomes, Bills, Donta Foreman, but he has Kupp and Justin Jefferson. Yeah, it's tough when you have Cooper Kupp and Justin Jefferson. Although at the same time, Cooper Kupp limited by the ankle injury, you wonder like what is his range of outcomes for this week, and I think it's tempered. Like you can't think that Cooper Kupp is going to get to those ceiling games. He's not going to get that 150, 200 yards. The ankle, can seriously hinder a wide receiver's upside. We've seen that through the data. So that's why I'm ranking Tyler Higbee higher this week. That's what I'm doing. So, yeah, maybe that's your little bit of solace there, Ricardo. And he has Kamara. Yikes. Yeah, that's a tough matchup there. All right. So those who are watching, make sure you're hitting that subscribe button. Also, jump in the comments, add your questions, start them, sit them for this week, week 9, and I'll talk about the matchups. I'll talk about other rankings, who do I have, and even talk through some flex plays. Usually I don't talk too much flex plays because I just have positional rankings, but it is all good. Mr. Lyric 62 TV, good evening. How are you? I'm French. Do you speak French? No, sorry. I know a couple French words, and I don't know if you'd be offended if I use them on the air. I'm always cautious to use like language from other people's, other people's country that I'm not used to. I taught in San Antonio, Texas for a couple years. And so the main language there, of course, aside from English, is Spanish because of many of the Mexican immigrants who had eventually moved over across the border from Mexico to Texas. And, I tried my best to learn the language, but there's only so much I could do. Just bonjour, magnifique, allez-vous français? I know some funny things too. Je suis manati, fou de fafa. That's the best I can do. Mr. Lyric, appreciate you jumping in. Yeah, bonjour, bonjour, monsieur. All right. A couple others. Mr. Lyric, if you want to throw some fantasy football questions in the chat too, we can definitely talk about it as well. If you want to teach me French, I'm open-minded as well. This is fun. That's why I do these podcasts. We have a great community that a lot of people internationally are joining in. So I appreciate Mr. Lyric 62 TV for jumping in. We'll get to a few more comments here in a second, but Ricardo just asked, should I start Jamal Williams or Garrett? I assume Garrett Wilson. So I think Jamal Williams is the set it and forget it low end running back 1 right now. That's how you should treat him. I know Jamal Williams is lower in my rankings right now, but it's a middle of the pack defense against the Green Bay Packers. And looking at what Jamal Williams has done this year, you can't be disappointed with what he's done. Okay. Running back 13 in week 1, 16 fantasy points, right? Running back 2 against Minnesota, running back 5 against Seattle, running back 9 against Miami. He's had 15 or more carries right? 4 of the last 5 games. So yeah, you should be very interested in starting Jamal Williams against a Green Bay defense that, according to Fantasy Pros, is one of the more positive ones. So there we go. I would go with Jamal Williams. Who do you think is a better pickup, Kadarius Toney or Garrett Wilson? I think for now, Garrett Wilson is the better pickup. Kadarius Toney could be a 0. He could be a something. As we've seen, I think both of them have extremely high upside, but Garrett Wilson has a more established role in the offense, especially since Kadarius Toney just got traded. Garrett Wilson right now is my wide receiver 33. He's facing off against Buffalo. And as we know, Buffalo is not an easy matchup, but Garrett Wilson has had 2 games so far this year where he's been finished as a wide receiver 20 or higher. So that's what I would say. All right, cool. Mr. Lyric asks, where am I from? Well, I was originally born. This is out of the United States, Mr. Lyric. And I was born in Wisconsin, the state of Wisconsin. We were living in Illinois at the time, but the closer hospital was in Wisconsin, and then moved to the state of Ohio, just outside of Cleveland. And as you can tell, I'm a Green Bay Packers fan. So born in Wisconsin, got all the cheeseheads, Robert Tonyan. I called his breakout a couple years ago. So my buddy Billy Muzio, who's the #1 ranker for Fantasy Pros right now. So he and I, good buds. We were podcast partners for 2 years. So he and I are very close. He got me that Tonyan jersey after he won a lot of money listening to me tell him that Tonyan was going to be the breakout tight end. And then I got my cheesehead and all the Packers gear. So Bakhtiari jersey even behind me. Oh, that way. Yeah. So, and now I'm in Michigan. So there you go. Starting lineup, Blurpy. Hey, Blurpy, thanks for jumping in this live stream as well. Appreciate you jumping in from YouTube. Make sure y'all are hitting the subscribe button in YouTube. That helps grow the YouTube community. And I have the link if you go to bestbellfantasy.com, or you can go to YouTube and search Best Bell Fantasy. You can find that link here, or you can go onto Twitter at FFStalder, and you can follow me on there, and it'll link you to all the things you need, okay? So, Blurpy, thanks for jumping in from YouTube. Starting situation, what do you think? Quarterback, Hurts, Cook, Henry, D-Hop, Amon-Ra, Likely, or Hill. Depends on Andrews. I agree. Depends on Andrews. 2 flexes, ETN, Kamara, Vikings D, Carlson. I don't like the Vikings D. That's the only thing that I would say is a real sore spot, because the Vikings, and here's the thing, if you're looking for a desperation streaming quarterback, Taylor Heineke, okay? And that's because Minnesota allows the 4th most passing yards per game. Taylor Heineke has not finished worse than quarterback 13 so far. He's thrown 2 touchdowns in both games that he started. He's rushed for 33 yards, and he just threw for 279 against a good Indianapolis secondary. So, yeah, I think that a very interesting streaming option this week is Taylor Heineke. And unfortunately, that's why I would not be in on the Vikings defense. Heineke's got nothing to lose. He's the 2nd-string quarterback, and he's just going to huck it up a little bit. So that's my only feedback on that one. Lucius, thanks for tuning in, Lucius. Appreciate you jumping in from YouTube. Bit of an odd situations. I have Andrews, Likely, Ingram. Who would I play this weekend? I would not make this decision yet until Sunday when we find out about Mark Andrews. Now, if you're coming down to, well, let's say Andrews is out. Mark Andrews is ruled out. Who do you have next? And Evan Ingram is a very interesting play because the Las Vegas Raiders matchup, it's beautiful. It's a 93rd percentile matchup because the Vegas Raiders give up 13.6 fantasy points to the tight end. And I know it's a slight disadvantage in like matchup to matchup for Ingram, but we saw that Evan Ingram, he finished as the tight end. Where is it? Why did it elude me? He's finished as a top 10 tight end 3 of the last 4 weeks, and he's gotten 6 or more targets right in each of the last 4 weeks. So I would be interested in starting Ingram. It's a good matchup. You have to think that the Vegas Raiders will put up a better showing than they did against the Saints and at least push the ball a little bit more. So there you go. That's what I'm thinking, is that regardless, not regardless. If it comes down to Likely or Ingram, I'm probably starting Ingram over Likely. You got to trot out Andrews if he makes it out there. That's a start your studs week. Sorry. Mr. Lyric 62 TV, you speak too fast for me. Fortunately, and you're the only one to answer me. I love you too. Lots of love here on the Best Bell Fantasy Football Podcast. Appreciate that happening. Ricardo jumps in and says, I'm from Brazil. Awesome. International. I wouldn't say bonjour. I don't know how to say that in Portuguese. Hello in Portuguese. Or good evening, I suppose, because it's 10:26 p.m. Eastern. So it's way past, my wife's or my kids' bedtimes. This is the only time I can realistically and regularly do fantasy football stuff is once all the people in my household are asleep. So that's how it is. Appreciate y'all jumping in. I stream defense. Yeah, that's what you're going to need to do, Blurpy. You're going to need to stream defense because, the Vikings are not one of the defenses that you should be starting this week. They just give up too many air points. And when you give up air points, that's not too great. I have moved Minnesota lower in the consensus. So yeah, the consensus is 8 and I moved them down to, top 12, 13. Okay. And let's see what else. G_the_X. Are you in a 4-man league? Nope, not a 4-man league. I did a trade for Henry. Yeah, good job trading for Henry. He's been crushing this year. He was one of the players that I wanted to be out on in the first round, and I had talked down a little bit too much. I didn't have enough Derrick Henry shares until it got really close to the season, but that's just how it is. Traded Lockett, Terry, and Foreman for Henry. Yeah, if you're hurting at injuries, which, we got Michael Thomas ruled out. We got Rashad Bateman ruled out for the season, both of them gone. If you're hurting for wide receivers, like, this makes sense. Like, I don't hate it. There you go. Follows Kadu for you. Follows Kadu. Okay. Appreciate that information. Dude, that trade wouldn't even be looked at in my league. Yeah, no, like, this is like in a vacuum. This is terrible. Like, this is a terrible trade. But I could see how a manager is like, I need a wide receiver. I need another wide receiver. I need a running back. And I'm just, it's just, I could see desperation just written all over this trade. Some other streams I've told about that trade say may have overpaid but got the best player. So in a vacuum, that's a bad trade. But based on team needs, league size, scoring, all of those things, I could see that being a reasonable thing. Football God 55 just popping in. Thanks for popping in. Appreciate you doing that. It's a lot of fun having everyone just pop in, supporting in the live stream. Yeah, awesome. My league is weird. I offered Stevenson and Debo for Kamara, and they declined. Yes, managers, are fickle and finicky sometimes. Like, it's always worth trying. That's what I would recommend, is it's worth trying, because you need to learn your league mates. You need to learn what trades they'll accept, what trades they'll not accept, what players they maybe favor more than others. Like, don't you dare off me or be a Packers player in any of the leagues, because I am so biased against the Packers right now. Like, I've got what's the opposite of rose-colored glasses? Like, I've got blinders on. Like, do not offer me Aaron Jones. Like, I traded away all my Aaron Jones shares. I traded away most of my A.J. Dillon shares. Like, I don't have almost any Alan Lazard, no Aaron Rodgers. Robert Tunyon's like the only one that I have because I got him so cheap, picking him off of waivers in most of my dynasty leagues. So there you go. Appreciate y'all jumping in. And make sure you're hitting that subscribe button, red subscribe button, sharing it with your friends, your enemies, y'all who are Ricardo here in Brazil. So if you want to share it with your Brazilian friends, and Mr. Lyric, if you want to share with your French friends as well. I only speak English primarily, so I can read some Latin. I took 4 years of Latin, so that like I can kind of understand a little bit of the Romance languages, but that's it for right now. I took. I mean, I decided not to take Spanish when I was in high school because I took it in 6th grade, right? And I got an A, and I was feeling good about an A grade. And then I took it in 7th grade, and then I got a B, and I was like, okay, well, I'm not doing as well. And then my 8th grade year, I got a C, and I'm like, I don't like how this is trending. I need to take 9th grade is going to be a D, right? If it follows this trajectory. So I didn't take any Spanish. I took Latin, and I love the language of Latin. Just throwing that in there. Okay. Anyways, cadeau means gifts. Okay. Learning French on the live stream. Love it. SOS from YouTube. Thanks for jumping in. Appreciate you doing that. Thoughts on Swift rest of the season? Okay. Traded DJ Moore and Courtland Sutton for Swift. That's a little bit of an overpay, but if you need a running back, I get it. Team is Mahomes, Mixon, Jones, Swift, ETN, Cordero, Patterson, White, Pacheco, Adams, Jefferson, Deontay, Wilson, Goddard. It depends on how many you need to start. You're obviously sitting pretty with Goddard having an absolute crushing game. Mahomes, you're going to be happy with. And in fact, Mahomes in my quarterback rankings this week is my quarterback 2, and the Chiefs rank number 1 in pass rate over expectation on the season. They get Tennessee, which, as I mentioned, is a real plus matchup for wide receivers. So you're pretty happy with Mahomes. Mixon has had some mixed results this year, but he gets Carolina, and right now Mixon is the running back 9 in the consensus. He hasn't finished lower than running back 27 since week 4, so that's been nice, but he hasn't been higher than top 12 since week 1 against Pittsburgh. So the 8 rushes, he kind of got game scripted out. It was you had to be happy to see 9 targets for Joe Mixon. He's on pace to break his career high for targets. It's the second time this year he's gotten 9 targets, but it was game script driven, and I don't think that the Cincinnati Bengals are going to be as game scripted out of games. Any moves you should make? If you can buff up one more of those wide receiver spots, I don't know if you needed to trade DJ Moore and Courtland Sutton. Your wide receivers should have been pretty good, if you would have kept Moore and Sutton. If I told you to do that, I apologize. That's my bad. Nevertheless, what I would say is that if you can buff up your last wide receiver spot, that would be great. Other than that, your running back depth is real good. You got good quarterback. Your onesie positions are all set. So you should be pretty happy with it. Rest of season with Swift, he's obviously got the running back 1 overall upside in his range of outcomes. But the concern with Swift, obviously, is the injuries and how they're going to manage him rest of season. He's been dealing with a shoulder issue. He's been dealing with other things, and he's questionable right now against Green Bay. It's a 1:00 game. He's expected to play, but he was not 100% this past week. So I would very much be cautious. He has an ankle and shoulder injury per the injury report. He was limited on Friday, questionable. Right, in the week 8 game against Miami, he did have 10 touches, but the coaches came out and said, hey, you probably touched the ball one too many times. So over the next couple weeks, he's got, a relatively good matchup against Green Bay. He's got a good matchup against Chicago. He's got a good matchup against the Giants. And then week 12 is a tough one against Buffalo, although we did just see Aaron Jones go for like 120 plus rushing yards. Granted, that was, game script driven or game plan driven. So I probably would temper expectations for Swift over the next 2 or 3 weeks, unless we see that he's declining or they hold him out. So, like I would start Antonio Gibson this week over DeAndre Swift. I don't know if I would go Deion Jackson. And I know that Deion Jackson has been a very popular name to say, oh, he needs to be the running back one. He needs to be a running back one. And yes, Deion Jackson was the running back one overall when he started in the one game where Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines were out. But you also have to remember 2 things. One is that he caught 10 passes in that game. Now, I would be willing to bet that there aren't any other running backs this year who have 10 receptions. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's going to be very, very few. I think it would be more likely for a player to have, let me see, game week 1 to 9. Let's see, just the running back position. I'm using fantasy data, by the way, to verify this for me. The most receptions, Deion Jackson tied for 3rd this whole season with 10 receptions, 10 targets. He only had 12 carries for 42 yards, only 3.5 yards per carry against the Jacksonville Jaguars, Deion Jackson. Now, do I think that he gets like 4 or 5 receptions? Sure. But I don't think within the range of outcomes for Deion Jackson is like running back one again. I just, with Sam Ehlinger, who's pulling plays out of the offense, you have to be worried about the efficiency of Deion Jackson. He's not going to get that elite ceiling through the passing. That's what I would say. I would keep Swift over Deion Jackson. Okay. Joe Castles from YouTube. Thanks for jumping in, Joe. Appreciate your patience, too. It's been about 6 minutes since you asked this question. But Rashid Shaheed, how do you like Rashid Shaheed? Yeah, you have to like this young kid, right? Rashid Shaheed it seems like every game he has like one spike play, right? One spike play for the Saints. And it's not like he's getting a lot of snaps or, he increased in week 8. He got 24.5% of snaps. He ran the most routes. He ran 10 routes. He got the most targets. He got 3 targets. He did only have 38 receiving yards, but 3 for 38 on 3 targets is okay. And you also have to remember the Saints didn't need him in this game against the Raiders. It could have been even higher. Rashid Shaheed in week 6, wide receiver 37. In week 7, wide receiver 29. He's just got a lot of spike to him. He was one of the best return men in college. He set college records for return yards and return touchdowns. He didn't go to the combine, so we didn't get metrics on him that way. But in an absolutely desperation deep league flex, I could see Rashid Shaheed get started up. Baltimore does allow the most wide receiver fantasy points on the season. And if you're looking for an absolute dart throw, Rashid Shaheed is only upside at this point. So I do like him in that capacity, but I'm not going to say, he's a top 36 option. He's a top 24 option. He's just not running enough routes and not commanding enough targets right now for me to be saying, he's elevated. You have to be encouraged by Rashid Shaheed's, though, 20.8% target rate. When he is on the field, he's getting, targeted 20% of the time. That it's a small sample, but you have to be happy with it. He already has 3 deep targets on the year, and 5 targets total. So, yeah, you have to like some of the very small sample metrics for Rashid Shaheed. All right, let's keep her rolling. Steez from YouTube. Thanks for jumping in. Steez, Henry, and Gabe Davis for Kupp and Swift. Okay, so I prefer Henry over Swift, especially this week. I do prefer Kupp over Gabe Davis. Let's look at the Week 17 matchups because I think that's going to be telling for these players. Derrick Henry's Week 17 matchup is against the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys, are a tough defense. Gabe Davis All right, let's stay with running backs. DeAndre Swift, week 17. I think he gets, the Bears. I thought it was the Bears. Bears are an easy run defense. Let's look at the wide receivers now. Gabe Davis and Buffalo. Gabe Davis and the Buffalo Bills in week 17 get the Cincinnati Bengals. And then Cooper Kupp gets the LA Chargers, which could turn into an absolute shootout of a game. Like, so if I'm like good for the playoffs and I'm stashing players, Kupp and Swift, but if I need a win this week, it's Henry and Gabe Davis. That's how I would view this, Steez, is short-term versus long-term. Can you afford to wait for Kupp and Swift to be healthy, be reacclimated, and then enter into these shootout games? Can you wait for that? Or do you need wins now? Because Henry and Gabe Davis are the win now types of plays. Okay. So your call, but that's the information that I would give you. Ricardo, back on the questions. Appreciate you. What trade should I do? Mahomes, Eckler, Donta Foreman, Jamal Williams, Clyde, J-Rob, Evans, St. Brown, CD, Garrett Wilson, Pickens, Engram, and Njoku. The Cowboys defense. You know, one of the needs that you're going to have to address is probably, if you can upgrade your tight end position. I don't know how easy it is to get a George Kittle. I don't know how easy it is to get an Andrews. But in an 8-team league, your tight ends need to be better than that. Like if you notice that a team is out of contention, like they are 2-6, or at least like you can convince them that they're out of contention. I will never tell you, like, if you're only halfway through the season, that you're out of contention. But in an 8-team league, right, if you're 2-6 and you've got Kelsey or Andrews or Goddard, right, those are the types of players you got to be targeting to upgrade over Engram or upgrade over Njoku. It's just, you don't want to wait around. You want to go target players like that, okay? And you have Marquise Brown and IR. Yeah, so I would see if you can upgrade that tight end position. I don't know if you can package a wide receiver and a running back to get it done, but that might be what you need to do. Do I accept? Trays from YouTube, thanks for jumping in. And for those who haven't jumped in, make sure you throw your questions in the comments section or your start sits. I'll be happily answering them. As long as you guys are here, I'm going to do that. It's always a lot of fun jumping in. My name is Bradley. You can follow me on Twitter at FFStalder. You can hit that subscribe button. Make sure you do. It helps grows the community, help makes us better, me better. I'm a big believer that iron sharpens iron in this industry. I'm a top 36 ranker out of over 200 in the Fantasy Pros Accuracy Rankings contest so far. I'm top 12 out of over 200 in wide receiver rankings on the season. So I want to say, iron sharpens iron. You make me better. I make you better. And that's how this community works. And I think I have some things brought to bring to the table based on those. So I'm happy to do this, jumping on in, answering your start sit questions. So throw them in the comments. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications when I go live. And Trays, do I accept Kupp for Godwin and Waddle? I probably would not trade away Godwin and Waddle for Kupp. In most scenarios, I would not do that. Now, if it's a small league, and you're trying to upgrade, yeah, I would. But in most scenarios, I would want the Godwin Waddle side. In my rankings just for this week, Godwin is top 13. Waddle is top 8. So these are two top tier wide receivers, and Kupp is dealing with an ankle injury. And as we know, ankle injuries tend to linger for weeks. It does impact players and their upside, as we've seen through the data. So those are some injuries that, even if a player does play, like Cooper Kupp his plan is to play in week 9, despite the ankle injury. Godwin and Waddle, Waddle gets the Chicago Bears, and he has an 83.8% PFF advantage over his projected highest defensive back and their defense. And then let's see, Chris Godwin gets the LA Rams, which could also turn into a shootout. So I would say Godwin and Waddle side there. Super C and B challengers. Yo, just trade away Pittman and Mostert for Devontae Adams. What do you think? Yeah, I think that's a good trade. That's the type of trade you want to do, because Pittman for Adams, obviously it's a downgrade to Pittman. If you're getting Adams, that is an obvious upgrade. And then if it only took Mostert to do it, excellent, because there's more ambiguity in the Miami backfield now that Jeff Wilson is there. We knew over the last 4 or 5 weeks, Chase Edmonds was not going to be involved in the Miami Dolphins offense. He was only getting 20% of the snaps, 15 to 30% of the snaps. Mostert was getting the majority of them, but now Jeff Wilson jumps in. If 5th round draft capital is not nothing. Like, it's not a lot, but it's not nothing. And to throw it at a 26, 27-year-old running back, that's a system fit. And you don't bring someone into a system fit and don't use him in your system. Okay? So that's what I would say is, like, for Mostert, he just became a lot more risky due to that Jeff Wilson trade. So I would definitely think the Devontae Adams side got the better of the deal in that trade. Chaka from YouTube. Thanks for hopping in, Chaka. Should I trade away Jacobs and Gabe Davis for Justin Jefferson and Khalil Herbert? Yeah, you should trade away Jacobs and Gabriel Davis for Justin Jefferson and Khalil Herbert. Yes, you should. Unless you really, really need running back. Right now, it's within the range of outcomes that Khalil Herbert just takes away this job from David Montgomery. Like, David Montgomery, looking at what he did last week, week 8, Montgomery and a half PPR only finished as the running back 38, 7 fantasy points, 22 receiving yards. He had 3 targets. He did have 15 carries against Dallas, but only for 53 yards, right? That's 3.5 yards per carry. That is disastrous if you want to be effective at running the ball. And that's compared to Khalil Herbert, who last week against this same Dallas defense, 16 rushes. He outcarried Montgomery. He outrushed Montgomery for 99 yards, and he finished as the running back 14 because he got in the end zone too. So Khalil Herbert, he might already be taking over that starting position. So not only do you get the better wide receiver, right, you're also getting an ascending running back. And look, I would still rank Josh Jacobs ahead of Khalil Herbert, but is it within the range of outcomes that we see Khalil Herbert finish as a top 24 running back by the end of the season? Of course it is. And then it's all worth it, I think, because Josh Jacobs, let's look at his schedule over the next few weeks. Jacksonville, Indy, Denver, and then he gets, some nice Seattle, LA Chargers, and then it gets really, really tough in the fantasy playoffs for Jacobs. He gets the LA Rams, he gets the New England Patriots, he gets the Pittsburgh Steelers and the San Francisco 49ers in week 17. That is tough sledding. So, and as we just saw, Khalil Herbert for the Chicago Bears gets the Detroit Lions week 17. Oh, in the championship week, if you make it the championship, you've got Justin Jefferson against Green Bay, who may be out of it at that point, and Khalil Herbert, who's got an absolute smash matchup. So Chaka, I like that side. Okay, Lucius, regarding the tight end question earlier, Andrews likely Ingram. The Ravens play Monday night, Jags on Sunday at noon. That's where the problem is. Yeah, I think we're going to get word on Saturday regarding Mark Andrews. Now, if we don't, I think you just plug in Ingram. If there is any hint that Andrews could be out, if we get confirmation on Saturday, tomorrow, yes, Mark Andrews is going to be active, then you're going to play Mark Andrews. You just got to roll with him. That's what I would say, Lucius. But if there's even just a hint of he could be 50-50, he's still questionable, they're not sure if he's going to play, you're going to plug in Evan Ingram. It's a good matchup. It's an upside matchup. Even if he doesn't hit, like, that's weighing the risk of also Mark Andrews not playing well because of the injury. And we saw that earlier in the season. It's not like Mark Andrews is dealing with minor injuries. He lost half a game just this past week, and then he put up a 0 virtually, in the week that he tried to play through his knee injury. So that's what I would say. If Patterson plays, would you start him over Swift and PPR? I would start him over Swift. Right now, Cordarrelle Patterson, I just feel like I keep moving him up in my rankings if he's active. Cordarrelle Patterson is my running back 19 right now, and I want to continue to just move him up because the LA Chargers give up the 96th percentile best as a best matchup against running back. They allow 26.7 half PPR fantasy points. That's among the top. I think there's only one or two teams that are higher. So if Patterson plays, he's a solid running back too for you. If even the first game back, that Caleb Huntley and Tyler Algier are going to be like between the tackles grinders, but Patterson's going to get targets. And you have to also think that the Atlanta Falcons defense is really bad. The Chargers offense, is injured, but they're good. Like, it's still Austin Eckler, it's still Gerald Everett, it's still Josh Palmer, who's, top 24 wide receiver. DeAndre Carter is also, if he's healthy, he's sick right now, so he's questionable, but I don't think he's not going to play. Like, we'll monitor that situation. I think the Chargers move the ball well against the Atlanta Falcons, and then the Falcons are going to move the ball pretty well against the Chargers defense. So I think that this could be a sneaky shootout game. So yeah, I like that. Where's the Swift Green Bay game? I could see this not being a shootout. I have Jared Goff as my quarterback 22 on the week. He's consensus 16. Goff has been on average the quarterback 24 over the last 3 weeks. Green Bay is shutting down quarterbacks. I mean, they limited Josh Allen to only 20 fantasy points. Josh Allen's lowest on the season before the Green Bay game was 25 fantasy points. They picked Josh Allen off twice. I think this is a tough game for Detroit to get a lot of points in. So I wouldn't be surprised if Swift doesn't have a great game, given the injuries and all of that. And so if Patterson is active and full go, I'm starting him very much over Swift, even in full PPR. Christian Kirk, Deion Jackson, Josh Palmer at the flex. Whew, tough questions here. So Christian Kirk gets the Vegas Raiders. You're starting Christian Kirk, I think, over Deion Jackson or Josh Palmer. I think Deion Jackson, in a PPR league, I'm going to go with Christian Kirk. Now, let me look at where I have Kirk. This is just off the cuff, but I think that I put Kirk ahead of, I have Kirk ahead of Palmer. Atlanta is a great matchup against Palmer, but the Vegas Raiders are also, giving up a lot of fantasy points. And looking at what Kirk has done so far, he's had 7 or more targets 5 times out of 8 games so far this year. And if he falls into the end zone, which he's done 4 different times so far, like, we're talking about a top 15 option pretty comfortably. Deion Jackson, I've mentioned this before, but I'm tempering my expectations on Deion Jackson, not because of workload. I think he will get, double-digit carries, and I think he'll get 5 or 6 targets, but you can't expect the 10-target game that he got when he subbed in. So I think that you got to go for the upside there. And Christian Kirk over Josh Palmer and then over Deion Jackson is how I'd rank it. And, could things fall one way or the other for variance? Like, could Deion Jackson get 2 touchdowns in the game? Sure, but I think that's unlikely given how the offense for Indy has gone. I mean, just one game of Sam Ehlinger being quarterback and they fired the offensive coordinator. That's all you need to know about the Indianapolis Colts at this point. They're down. Jonathan Taylor's out. They fired the offensive coordinator. Maybe Frank Reich is on the hot seat. Who knows? But nevertheless, I would go Christian Kirk over Josh Palmer. I just don't think Palmer is that great of a talent, though. And he's got massive opportunity, but I'm not thinking he gets into that 25% target share like Keenan Allen would or Mike Williams would if they had the wide receiver 1 role to themselves. Super C and B challengers, also Hayden Hurst or Darren Waller. Waller probably isn't going to play, so I'm rolling with Hayden Hurst. Sean Burns, thanks for popping back in. Appreciate you from YouTube. My favorite tight end trade targets are Freiermuth and Goddard. It's kind of hard now after Goddard's big game. I agree. My friend Billy Muzio at FF Muzio, he and I were texting during the game yesterday, and he was like, I moved Goddard down like 2 spots from consensus, and I'm like, I felt like I moved him up. I think Goddard was tight end 4, and I moved him up to 3, and then the consensus moved him up to 3, and I was like, no, because I wasn't willing to move Dallas Goddard to the tight end 2 position because Travis Kelce has a 51% matchup advantage per PFF against Tennessee, and Zach Ertz gets the Seattle defense that allows 18 fantasy points per game and a half PPR to the tight end position. So Kelce, Ertz, and then Goddard were my top 3 rankings for the week. And maybe Kelce and Ertz bust, but to get Goddard up there, I was pretty happy with that. Also, my tight end 4, for what it's worth, is Tyler Higbee, because he's got a 23% matchup advantage against Atlanta. And then my tight end 5 on the week is okay. Sorry, I might have said the wrong thing there. Kelce, Ertz, Goddard, Everett, and then Higbee. That's how I round out my top 5. Awesome. Super C and B challengers, appreciate you. Just subscribed. Thank you. I appreciate you. That's awesome. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate your questions, jumping on in. And make sure you're hitting that turn on notifications as well when I drop videos. Sometimes I'll chop up these videos as well. And then I also do the live streams, so making sure that you know when the live streams are on. We've got a couple more questions in the chat, and if you want to throw some more questions in, feel free to do that. Make sure you're hitting that red subscribe button so that our community continues to grow here on the Best Bell Fantasy YouTube channel. And SOS from YouTube asks, thoughts on Drake London and Jameson Williams rest of season? You have to like that Drake London is, he's been involved. I know he's had some up and down weeks so far, but where is my wide receiver rankings? There we are. Drake London. He's my wide receiver 31, but he does have a matchup advantage, 88.3% advantage matchup versus cornerback, defensive back Michael Davis of the Chargers. So that is one of the most favorable ones in the NFL. He has had a cold streak after starting the first 3 games with double-digit fantasy points. He hasn't finished better than wide receiver 49, since week 3. But this seems to be a plus matchup, and it seems to be that the Falcons and the Chargers are just going to go at each other in this game. I think this is one of the higher over-unders on the week. I can verify that soon, but I just have the feeling that let me pull up the lines for the week, but Jameson Williams might not be available for the next month. That's the new report out. So unfortunately, I was a little trigger happy on getting the Jameson Williams hype train going. But Drake London, rest of season, I think, is the way I lean. And let's see here. The Chargers, Falcons, over-under is 49.5. The Green Bay Packers, Lions is 49.5. And I don't see any others that are that high. So they're tied for the highest. Seattle and Arizona are at 49. So this game very much could be turning into a shootout. My intuition was correct that the Falcons game is projected to be a shootout. You want pieces of the Atlanta Falcons, LA Chargers game in Atlanta. It's in a dome. Don't have to worry about weather. Let's get all of our players healthy. Imagine if Keenan Allen and Mike Williams were in this game. Oh, it would be a slugfest. All right, seems like we've got one more question from SOS, and then we're going to call it a night unless you throw some more comments in the live stream. Would you trade Garrett Wilson and Hines for Christian Kirk? At this point, I would hold on to Garrett Wilson and Nyheim Hines. I just hold on to them. I don't think the upgrade from Garrett Wilson to Christian Kirk is enough to offset the loss of Nyheim Hines at this point, because Nyheim Hines, my initial takeaway is this is great for best ball leagues. Like Nyheim Hines could win seasons, win leagues this year if he spikes at the right time. And we've seen spike weeks from Nyheim Hines. He was on a tough offense this year. Indianapolis Colts, not one of the better ones before he was getting traded, and now Nyheim Hines on the Buffalo Bills. So, yeah, that's what I would say is it's not enough of an upgrade is my takeaway there. Let's see. Sean's asking, do you think this team is good enough to win championship, or do I have to make a move? 12-man, PPR, 5-3, Tua, Henry, Sanders, Waddle, D-Hop, Taysom, Evans, Mike Williams, Foreman, Chuba, and Likely. If you can package Likely and Taysom to get an upgraded tight end, I don't know if you can get Goddard. I don't know if you can get Kittle. But once again, like in this 12-man league, it could be that, packaging those two players plus another bench player might get you there. I'm not sure. It depends on how stingy your league mates are on giving up those elite tight ends. That's the thing is Taysom, like we love his upside. We absolutely love Taysom's upside, but his downside is flat 0. Yeah. So that's what I would do. Go for it. Yeah. Heck yeah. Go for the championship. No time like the present. So make a move. 5-3. You're in a good spot. Make a move and see if you can get a tight end. Improve your tight ends there, Sean. SOS was thinking about picking up London off waivers. He'll be a good depth piece. I think so. I think that's a good. He's a solid player. Like it was, a first round pick for a reason. First wide receiver off the board. Drake London. Let me look here. Yeah, 5 targets, 7 targets, 7 targets, 6 targets, 12 targets, 7 targets. Like, I think that he's going to get some targets. He's got the Chargers, and then he's got Carolina, and then he's got Chicago, and then he's got Washington, Pittsburgh. None of those defenses really scare you at all. Week 14 is his bye, so you're going to have to struggle through that. But New Orleans is tough. And then Baltimore in the playoffs, that seems to be pretty good, although the Baltimore defense might be gelling by that point. They've got Roquan Smith now. That's wild. They got Bowser. They got Ojabo back. So that could be a tough one. But then week 17 against Arizona, that could be a shootout, a sneaky shootout for sure. Just thinking rest of season for London. And then Sean's asking, get Andrews or Swift JT, wrist upgrade at Miles Sanders. 2 weeks ago, I would have said go for JT, buy low on JT. But at 5-3, like you don't want to risk like losing more games with JT just hanging out on your bench when you could have another player. I would just keep Miles Sanders. It seems like Sanders has been a really effective running back in that Eagles backfield. And it seems like our fears have been put to rest. Like I rank Sanders as a top 7 running back. This week he finished with 15 fantasy points, which 15 fantasy points would get him probably between running back 13 and running back 10 for this week, which is fine. He got 17 carries, and this is the 4th time that Miles Sanders has 17 carries on the season, 93 rushing yards. It's the 3rd time this season he's had 93 or more. So I think that's fine, keeping Miles Sanders. It's Evans and Foreman for JT or Swift and Curtis Samuel. If someone's given away one of those running backs, is Evans and Foreman for JT or Swift and Curtis Samuel. Like, just make it Evans and Foreman for JT or Swift if you really want to make a trade like that. I don't know if the person would scoff at you. Look at this guy trying to, but I would, see what you could do there. Is that a bad trade? I can see how managers wouldn't like it. But if they needed if they needed startable assets and it's a redraft league, I could see them being like, you know what, this makes sense for me. I'm downgrading running back from JT to Foreman, but I am starting someone this week. And then Mike Evans is going to be a solid low-end wide receiver 1, high-end wide receiver 2 rest of the way. So I get it. He was debating doing Evans and Foreman for Swift and Sutton. Yep, smash that. Click the smash button. Yeah, I do that. I would do that. All right, awesome. Last call for questions, comments, any praise you want to give. Make sure you're hitting that subscribe button. I really appreciate it. It's been great growing with you over the past few weeks and just carving out time so that y'all can ask your questions, get into it, and listen up. All right, awesome. Cool beans. Well, this has been a lot of fun. Appreciate y'all jumping in. Make sure you check out the YouTube channel, the other videos that I posted. Give the likes, give the views, comment on them, ask me questions. I'll see what I can do about being live tomorrow. Unfortunately, our guest had to fall away, but I have confirmed coming up this month, Matthew Kelly, the Podfather himself, the Mind of Mansion himself, is going to jump on one of the Thursday night streams. So I want you to make sure you're hitting that notifications button. He's going to be a great guest. I've been following some of the player profile Roto Underworld stuff for a while now, and it's been great. I'm looking forward to having Matthew Kelly of Roto Underworld join me. I use Player Profiler all the time. They're a good partner with Fantasy Data, the site that I write for as well. So I want to make sure that y'all are subscribed. We're going to have a great time having Matthew Kelly on for a Thursday night stream coming up here in the next couple weeks. So make sure your notifications are turned on. Make sure you're following me at FF Stalder. Make sure you're hitting that subscribe button. And I appreciate y'all. This has been a lot of fun. Until next time, good luck in the fantasy football streets, everybody.
Hey, really the only thing that gon' be normal is distribution. Normal folks gon' infuse some. Optimize your lineups and you feed the rest, you mute them. Turning it up, these numbers are loud. Peeping this game from a nimbus is wild. Making it rain while I embrace all this risk, I'm insane. Talking about that BestBell, I'm the best tell. Into the next well, guess I got next still. BestBell, I'm the best till. Into the next world, guess I got next still.